I woke up this morning and then I watched the entire U.S. broadcast while drinking coffee, and I didn't go on Twitter or anything, so I didn't get spoiled. And then come like halftime, I'm like, all right, this is just ridiculous. And then I went on Twitter, and then I watched the remainder of the broadcast, having spoiled myself and seeing the final score. But that was just absolutely atrocious, abysmal, and embarrassing for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, don't ever start a sentence with "I woke up," because everybody does that.
Suddenly I was awake. Okay, Scott, with his Robert California vibes. Ever since you lived in movie California, Scott. Sorry. Suddenly,
you think it was the worst Super Bowl ever?
Ooh,
blowout ever?
No, because I was listening to some people and looking back on some of these Super Bowls, like in the 80s, back in the day, there was a lot of lopsided Super Bowls. And it's like when you come down to the final score, it was actually just an 18-point game, even though the actual game was way more lopsided than the score showed. But I mean, at least in terms of that first half there, something crazy. Mahomes, like, granted, he ended up getting a little bit of stats in garbage time, like at the end of the fourth quarter. But at some point, I think with a couple minutes left in the third quarter, his passer rating was like 12. I mean, this was just the most uncharacteristic. I've never seen him so flustered, uncomfortable, and just not playing well.
It was like late into the third quarter that he only had 52 yards and I don't even think he was at 50% completion percentage. I mean, I could be wrong. I was just getting numbers jumbled up in my mind while watching, but like, that was uncharacteristic of all things Chiefs. Even the defense, the defensive line specifically, I know they were up against it with the best offensive line in the NFL, in the Eagles, and what they have going, but something was off there the entire game. And there was some speculation that Mahomes may have had a little bit of a doozy, a little bit of a concussy going on with one of the first opening drives. But I don't think there's any credence to that. The way he fell, it probably would have been a shoulder injury more so than a head.
And Mikey, you don't even believe in concussions anyway, so that feels right, Mike? No.
And you're in the Super Bowl. Nothing like that's going to affect you. Just get over it.
Seemed like it
adrenaline
you say it's not characteristic of the Chiefs. That is actually very characteristic of the Chiefs. They are just phone it in until it's crunch time. Okay, they usually just go, okay, we don't need to try yet. Okay, it's the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. Let's start trying now. Let's see if we can pull it off. And it usually works. Okay, that usually works throughout the season, but this time the Eagles were too good for them to pull that attitude off. And so
but usually they don't go down 30 plus, like even if they are going that.
No. I know what you know,
but because the Eagles were so much better than what they faced. Okay, but that attitude is what they've had. That attitude and approach is what they had the whole season. And
that is true.
Caught up to them.
This was just the most extreme case of it, but they were lackluster in the start, and then they really all of their games were one-score comebacks. Like they were really. This actually kind of was really on brand for them. They just waited a little bit too long to get going. And we're bashing on Mahomes, which he did not play well. It was very, very bad. One of his worst games ever. Certainly his worst Super Bowl, possibly the worst game that he's ever played as an NFL professional quarterback. But his offensive line was just absolutely atrocious. It kind of reminded me of the Super Bowl. I think it was 2020 when they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against Brady, the legit GOAT, and his offensive line. I think they were missing 2 starting tackles in that game, and he was running all over the place. They had no shot. This was kind of reminiscent of that.
Yeah, there was an element to that. Did I see the stat right that the Chiefs actually didn't blitz the entire game? Is that accurate?
The Eagles
that's what I meant.
Blitz. Yeah. So the Eagles did not blitz the entire game. They did a 4-man pressure the whole time. And even with that, I think they pressured Mahomes on 52% of dropbacks. Ended up with 6 sacks, forcing two interceptions, one the pick 6. We got to talk about that. That's exciting. And it was just unbelievable that they were able to sit back there in coverage, and their D line was just getting so much pressure on them. And it's just the Chiefs got to figure something out with their O line. Yeah, here's the stat right here for those just listening. The Eagles did not blitz once across the 42 dropbacks in the Super Bowl. Just the 4th defense to not blitz in the game. That, I think, is the big story here, because you can't get going. There's a great saying that when the quarterback gets hit, the entire team feels it. And Mahomes was getting pressured and hit from the jump, and you could see that. Like the Chiefs, their body language just unraveled like pretty quickly, and they could never recover from that.
What's the O-line's excuse? They didn't bring any blitzes. What was the D-line? They were just that much better
Yeah.
And like, were they doing a bunch of twists and stunts? What were they doing?
They just have some of the best talent on the defensive line. But the thing is, the Chiefs have a pretty solid interior offensive line. It was just their tackle situation mainly was
Couldn't have
really,
left
really
the
weak.
back in, throwing a chip.
They refused to adjust, and Mahomes couldn't get anything going there. I mean, Scott, what do you think from the quarterback perspective? How impossible is it to really get anything going when you're just pressured like that?
Yeah, it's incredibly impossible because you're just trying to make something happen every single play. And like at a certain point, if outside of a second and a half, if something's not showing itself, then you're starting to, I don't want to say panic, but to a certain extent, there is an elevated level of anxiety rushing toward you along with the defensive linemen that, you were mentioning it. The Eagles D line is so good. I mean, Carter leading the helm right there. Like they were just decimating the Chiefs offensive line. And yeah, when you got a quarterback that's just running for his life at a certain point, it's just, there are only so many opportunities you can get. And I think you mentioned it even when we were discussing with Jordan on Friday, and that in Friday's episode is like, the Chiefs have had a lot of call it short yardage plays or behind line of scrimmage plays. And that stuff just wasn't working because we were talking about the Eagles defensive line. The Eagles secondary and linebacking crew just came out and was playing lights out with Fangio. His scheme was something else. I mean, good for him for getting that first win. What was he, 0-8 against them?
He was 0-8 against Mahomes. That's what we were talking about last week. The MVP, okay, I know Jalen Hurts actually got the MVP, and we do have to talk about him because he does not get enough credit, and we are guilty, or at least I am guilty of being one of those people that does not credit him enough. Sorry, Jalen. I always knew you could do it. The real MVP of the Eagles is Vic Fangio and their GM, Howie Roseman. Scott, can you throw this up that I'm highlighting right here? Because his offseason that he put together this year to accumulate talent, both on and off the field in coaches and in players. So look, Howie Roseman, the greatest NFL offseason ever this year. He hired Vic Fangio. He drafted Quentin Mitchell. He drafted Cooper DeJean, signed Zach Bond. That's one of my favorite. He was a hidden gem. Re-signed CJ Gardner-Johnson, hired Kellen Moore as the OC, signed Saquon, signed Mekhi Becton. That's unbelievable. That's all in an offseason. You look at some of those names, right? And look at that photo, too. I mean, that's a winner right there. Mike?
That looks like Eli Manning.
He does look like Eli Manning. Scott, can you scroll back up a little bit? But when you look at some of those names, and like, look at that. Cooper DeJean, pick 6 in the Super Bowl. Zach Bond had that other interception right there at the 10-yard line that put him in position to score. It's like, these are really, really key contributors.
Yeah, I think those two, you're talking about both those interceptions, they were back-to-back, I think, in the drives. And I think those were just momentum killers for the Chiefs. And talking to what Mikey was saying earlier and how, the Chiefs are always doing this, they're always coming from behind, or it takes them a while to get like juiced up and revved up. But once those two things occurred, I think that put them so far behind the 8 ball that overcoming that would have had to have been a Brady-esque sort of story. And to be quite frank, I know a lot of people were sitting there just being like, yep, of course, the NFL is going to script this and it's going to be the best comeback, even better than Brady's 28-3 comeback over the Falcons a few years ago, so on and so forth. But ultimately, that wasn't the case. I mean, you just, at a certain point, if you cannot at least not turn the ball over and hang on to the ball and drive the ball, you're not going to win. And regardless of how good your quarterback is or your offense is throughout the year. So this is like those two plays right there, I think were the nails in the coffin for sure.
Yeah, that just totally just stopped any sort of hope of momentum. And then like we talked about, the Chiefs offense, how they've been all year, that is not conducive to coming back in a game like this from this big of a deficit. They are one of the least explosive offenses. They don't make big plays. They kind of just dink and dunk around the field. And when you're down 28, 34-0 at one point, like you need to take shots. You need to be explosive, and they don't have it. Scott, you were talking about, is it like, because I was thinking that same thing, dude, while watching, like, okay, is Mahomes going to make this Brady comeback, this versus Atlanta Falcons 28-3 comeback? Turns out he didn't, but I was waiting for it. Will you put this up here, Scott, that I just highlighted? Because some other people were thinking this also. This is a hilarious tweet. The tweet is a photo of Mahome or Brady sitting on that Super Bowl down 20-0. And it says, Mahomes going to need to make whatever sacrifices Brady made here. And the person replied to the tweet, yeah, Brady gave up his family right here.
That's what it takes. That's what it takes to be the best.
That's what it takes.
His family
Mahomes,
was weighing him down.
So
unbelievable. Yeah, this was. I was ready for it. Like personally, I was just like, "Yep, this is 100% what's going to happen. They're going to come from behind. They're going to fall down because it's been happening over and over again throughout the regular season and the playoffs as we're beating a dead horse here." But like. And it would only have been that much better because Brady was on the call in the booth, so on and so forth. Like it was too perfect of a situation. But ultimately, birthday boy Cooper DeJean comes through and kills that hope.
Hey, you want to throw this up right here? This LOL right here, Cooper DeJean. They said, we haven't had a Caucasian corner in the NFL in years.
Gee, Nick.
And for those just listening, it is a photo of Jackie Robinson and Cooper DeJean side by side. So Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in 1947, obviously. In baseball, Cooper DeJean did it in 2024, bringing the extinct white corner back from the dead. And he did it in style on his birthday, picking off Pat Mahomes for a pick six. And now probably a lot of people are upset at us for that picture, aren't they?
Yeah.
Apparently Mikey is.
Thanks, Nick.
I love it. I think it's a beautiful picture.
So there's that. But the other thing that I want to talk about is, does this, how does this affect Mahomes in the GOAT conversation? Because we have talked about this quite a bit. And Scott, you have been very adamant about him not being yet a Mount Rushmore quarterback in NFL history. And after that game yesterday, your point has a lot more weight behind it. And will you throw this up, this tweet right here, Scott, on how does this affect or hurt his legacy so far? But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it still stands true. I think had Mahomes won this and gone three-peat and done all of the amazing things he's done to this point, this would have been the cherry on top to where you could actually start having a legitimate conversation where Mahomes might be the GOAT. I don't think the door is closed for him for being chiseled onto Mount Rushmore, as we've been talking about. I just still think he's a solid stride or two behind Brady. And I think for all intents and purposes, that is wildly fair to say, because I'm going to pull this up as well. If you look at like the statistics here of just the Super Bowls that have been played, ultimately what matters is this right down here, the Super Bowl titles, and him not having his fourth after being there for 5 times is starting to show its colors. And, he's going to need to go a couple more times and win them in order to really start making that conversation real again.
How hard is it going to be to gear back up after this offseason? Just remotivate yourself after losing this repeat.
We're gonna go.
That's gone forever. Never again. You're gonna get that.
You gotta be okay. We're gonna reload. We just gotta win. 3 in a row. We just gotta go. We win one, and then another.
Everyone get back together. Get just 3 more seasons. Perfect. 3 more perfect seasons in a row. We do it again. It's fine.
No, that was the shot. That was it. I mean, I think that also would really affect the GOAT conversation, because that's something that Brady didn't do. Now it's unlikely that Mahomes will do that and have something that Brady doesn't have. And so I think that really, really affects it there.
Look, I know it's not apples to apples because it's a completely different sport, but we've been talking about the LeBron James MJ comparison because that's a conversation about goatness and everything like that. Obviously, the new age people are jumping on us and being like, "Oh, you're just Jordan glazing." It's like, well, dude, Jordan is statistically outmatches LeBron in everything, literally everything across the board. So I don't understand that. And then you look at the statistics here. It's like new age people are so hyper concerned about statistics. I don't understand how you could look at truth and think something else is true. These numbers don't lie.
Well, it's about your truth.
Scott, don't try and place your truth onto other people for their truth. Okay. How dare you?
Yeah, dude, the turnover ratio here, I think, is what's telling. I was talking about it earlier. You can't throw 2 picks and think you're going to win the big game, especially against a defense that's as formidable as the Eagles was or is. So, the fact that Brady just took care of the ball more fully in these big games, I think, is a reason why he has so many rings.
Yeah, and the turnover situation, Patrick is just a bit reckless, man. And those turnovers, granted, like we said, he's under pressure on some of these situations, but those really just took the wind out of the sails, or any potential wind out of the sails of the Chiefs. And the turnovers are just absolute killers. Speaking of the GOAT conversation, you mentioned Michael Jordan. So we throw up these two photos here because we've got this awesome photo of Jalen Hurts, and he is now, this is kind of comparison to the MJ photo, but we've got Jalen Hurts with, there he is. That's an iconic, hang it in the Louvre right there. But I wanted to throw this up because we have to give more credit to Jalen Hurts. Okay.
Yeah.
Listen to this. There are, in the last 10 years, there are only 3 active quarterbacks in the NFL who have a Super Bowl. It's Matthew Stafford, it's Pat Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts. And we just never, ever talk about Jalen Hurts as a top 5 quarterback. I know some people do. It's not a consistent take to have, but there is something to be said for winning it all. It's also kind of, I know I've been a huge Nick Sirianni kind of basher or not a supporter of him, but he's kind of the same situation. We have to give him credit. I might not understand it. I don't get why it works or what he offers, but it works. He's been in 2 Super Bowls in his first 4 years as a head coach, and he just won one. So we've got to give our props to a guy like Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, absolutely. Jalen Hurts for sure. And I agree with you. I haven't been beating the drum of Jalen Hurts. I've always been like, I don't see it yet, right? I don't see it yet. But I could also, along with many other people, my vision or outlook on him could be muddied by what happened during college and like him getting beat out by Tua, right? And then him going to Oklahoma and kind of like doing well, but not really like getting to the pinnacle as he was at Alabama before being replaced. And then he enters into the league and it's just like, he's fighting for a huge paycheck, and the Eagles have done pretty well, but not incredibly well to this point. So like, honestly, I think this is just in a similar fashion to a much lesser degree, but in a similar fashion where I say like, oh, okay, I didn't point to Brady and be like, that guy is the best of all time until he overcame that 28-3 deficit. I think Jalen Hurts in this moment just proved he is elite in the NFL. And nobody needs me to say that, but just everything he's put out there and everything he's approached with all of the adversity he's faced in his career, him being able to do this while staying like incredibly stoic, level-headed, dude, hats off to him, man.
I think a lot of that comes from what happened in college, his experience in college, because you're coming in as a huge recruit, you're in Alabama, you're handed pretty much everything along his whole career path. And then once he's derailed and has the rug pulled out and he has to start from scratch in college from the peak, he's from the pinnacle, has to start from scratch, rebuild, and then get back to a draft stock and get back. That's where he gets that greediness, that chip on his shoulder that, you can kind of see the difference between what he has mentality wise versus what Tua has. Yes, Tua plays through all these concussions, but in terms of like this competitiveness and like this elite mindset, that I think his college experience puts him on a whole other level.
Yeah. When you have an adversity situation like that and you get it all taken away from you, he is very, very stoic. And even when he, makes mistakes, he threw a pick pretty early on. It's just no big deal. Hey, calm, cool, and collected. And so it's super impressive because like we talk about Lamar, we talk about Josh Allen, we talk about Joe Burrow as the top, and Mahomes as the top tier quarterbacks in the NFL. But Jalen Hurts has something 3 of those guys don't have. He has a Super Bowl title, which is actually what it's all about. And we do have to start talking about him in a different way. Stats are not the end all be all. What matters are championships, and he already has one. And I think, what is he, 26, 27?
Yeah, Mikey's age. This is not degrading anything, I think, as you were saying, Mikey, that Tua has done, right? So, like, obviously he's had his adversity, the concussions, injuries, all that kind of stuff and everything, but this is different.
The New York Giants, what is Shane, their GM, just watching Joe Schoen, watching just in a division rival, seeing what elite GMing is, and he's just got to feel completely decimated and empty after this, because do you look at what Howie Roseman has done compared to him? Like they got to get rid of him.
Yeah, this is, he has one more year, but I don't think, that's at least what Mara has come out and said, him and Dayball, they both have 1 year left to prove themselves. Otherwise they're out probably. So they're on the piping hot seat for sure. And this is just this has to be so painful to watch Barkley have the year that he did, 1, and then 2, end up winning the title in the fashion that he did. So yeah, dude, you got to feel for Shane. You know, he's probably thinking about this too.
For sure, dude. Here's a question I have. Okay. Mike, what's so funny?
I'm watching Super Bowl. Oh, I did. You think people noticed? Do you think everybody noticed? Everyone knows, don't they? And he goes back into work the next day. Guys.
Yeah. I mean, his son would have been a better GM than him. His son
you see that clip of his son?
Yeah, draft Jaden Daniels. His son was very confident about it. Something about 13-year-old boys, they actually know their stuff when it comes
teenage
to
boys who play a lot of Madden. That's everything, because you have this delusional confidence you've exposed all these playbooks.
Well, I think the New York Jets organization might have something else to say on that matter, because Johnson was listening to his son Brick.
That's true. That's
true. It didn't go that well.
It works for some organizations.
He named his son Brick. Okay. Loud noises.
Some organization and others, it does not. Here's the question that I wanted to ask. Okay, well, what do you have something else on this point?
No, you pose it first, and then I'll get to this because we touched on it earlier.
Okay. Kellen Moore, the Eagles offensive coordinator, who had a super successful season, he is all rumors pointing to him taking the head coaching job at the Saints. I wonder, if you're in his position, do you think that he is now, after winning this Super Bowl and seeing, okay, also the Eagles are going to be pretty damn good next year. They've still got a lot of these guys coming back, a lot of young guys that really contributed. Does he consider or have kind of second guess the idea of going to the States and kind of pulling a Ben Johnson of maybe wait another year and see if a better job opens up? Because the New Orleans Saints job right now, not that ideal. Who knows who their quarterback is going to be? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a really tough one, because I was saying Ben Johnson probably should have waited, but they're making a lot of moves at the Bears organization to where it looks like he might have a shot.
But he did wait. He did wait the previous year until a more ideal opportunity came up. So he did wait.
Sure. But I'm saying the ideal opportunity was really the Bears that he should have.
Well, I actually think
so I was arguing.
The Bears could actually be an ideal scenario. They've got a quarterback with talent. It's a major market city. There's a lot of potential there. So it's not a throwaway. It's not the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Why'd you say it like that?
Nick went to a speech therapist who has to announce every letter. Because speaking English like an Italian.
I've been living in Europe too long that I in the middle of saying that, I was about to pronounce it the British way of Jaguar, and I caught myself on the U, Jaguars, and then so that's why I came out with a little bit of a stutter.
Du bist nicht so klug.
No, this is what I'm saying though, is like prior to them making, it's easy to say all of that about the Bears right now, right? Because of the moves that they've made over the past month. But prior to him choosing them, that looked like a dumpster fire. So obviously they've righted the ship with him coming in at the helm, probably under his direction, him and Poles, and making those moves and making those decisions to where it looks much better than it did when he initially took the job. I'm just saying, like, I was saying maybe Johnson should have waited another year on top of the one that he did last year to stay at the Lions and see what they can do and see what other job opportunities open up. But granted, I go back to the point that every opportunity that opens up, it's usually not a good one, because there's an opening and there was a firing and they failed and so on and so forth. So there's some sort of turmoil going on in an organization that needs a new head coach. To going back to Kellen Moore, this one's interesting because he's had multiple stops as an OC before. So he was at the Dallas Cowboys prior to, and then at the Eagles. So I think he's at a point in his career where it's like, okay, you got to take the shot. You got to see if you got it as a head coach and see if you can continue that success. Otherwise, you might always be stuck at that level, because while he is young, he's been in the conversation about head coaching positions for quite some time. And those windows don't stay open forever, especially with him, where it's like, this is the highest he's ever been in his career. And in terms of sustained success, it's hard to point to it and be like, oh, he has a decade's worth of like just top-notch success as an OC and so on and so forth. So I think he just has to take the opportunity as it's granted. Will that be the best decision for his career? Time will tell.
No, you do. I mean, it's kind of hard to say you should not take a head coaching opportunity when you have it. He is 36 years old, not very young. Mike, I want you to look up a picture of him and tell me
he's done with that.
You can go away. You tell me later. Based off his face, if you think he's going to be a successful.
Kellen Moore?
Type it in.
I was about to say just that. When you first brought up, I was going to say, I don't know if he has the teeth to be a head coach.
No, it doesn't translate.
A little too smiley to be my head coach.
Just like Ben Johnson.
So that's my take.
Smiley.
Well, okay, but before we hop off this, I do want to bring it up because you kind of touched on it, Nick, the Sirianni thing. It's just like, you don't know what he necessarily brings to the table. He's kind of an enigma. He's just an energetic enigma at that, too.
Sure.
Kind of popping off at fans and so on and so forth. But this dude has been under a microscope, the Philly microscope at that, for years. And he has had wild success, and yet he's still seemingly on the hot seat, or at least in the crosshairs of all of the fans at all times, which is nuts. And it's Philly fans are
just goes to show how ridiculous Philadelphia Eagle fans are. Sorry, Philly fans. Yeah. Don't come find us, please.
Yeah. No, you guys are on cloud 9 right now. Stay there. Like, don't deal with us. But okay, I think one of the shining lights. He's usually a buttoned up dude outside of those outbursts toward fans or sounding like kind of like a bumbling dummy on a microphone. But this moment right here after they won, I thought was so telling as to who he truly is in the locker room and why the dudes seem to play the way they do for him. So, like, I want to play this real quick.
Check it out.
Nick, Super Bowl champions. What does the moment mean? Man, God's blessed us very much. He gave us all the talents to be able to get here. So, first and foremost, thanks to him. And this is the ultimate team game. You can't be great without the greatness of others. And great performance by everybody. Offense, defense, special teams, Howie getting us the guys, our coaching staff, these great players. We didn't really ever care what anyone thought about how we won or their opinions. All we wanted to do is win. That's why we listened to my prerogative a little bit when we were after some wins. But thank God. Thank you, Jesus.
Okay. He actually he's earning points back with me a little bit there.
6 pound, 8 ounce.
We baby Jesus.
Yeah, no, I think what's really telling here is he's talking about it being a complete team game, and no one's above the team in this locker room, and like it's clear that for as concise of a message as that was clearly what he was delivering to the team and what they bought into and were all in on, and that's why they ended up winning. So ultimately. It's like his perspective shown forth in that moment, and his leadership at that. Like it's hard to deny at that point after hearing what he had to say right there.
Yeah, that's true. That actually does make me look at him a little bit differently. I mean, he's been not that he cares, but he has been earning points back in my perspective and opinion over the course of the years or over the course of the season.
I feel like him earning points back from a fellow Italian means more than anything.
Well,
else.
Does he have his Italian passport? We'll see.
I'm sure.
Okay. Coach Sirianni, if you're watching this, we'll help you get your passport. Then you can help coach on the Italian national team. So there it is, dude. Eagles stop the 3-peat attempt from the Chiefs. Hey, but okay, speaking of a little bit of the media stuff, because all right, with the Super Bowl, it's not just what goes on the field, and we kind of hammered all of that, but tons of media. The Super Bowl is just a pillar of American culture. So much going on. A lot of cool commercials, some stupid commercials. But one point on the media aspect of this thing was the score bug from Fox, okay? Oh. You are preparing all year for the Super Bowl, for this broadcast, and everyone is watching this, got their eyes on it, and you put up something like this. Scott, will you throw it up? This is the score bug that they came up with. Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, default setting, score bug. Just one of the worst I've ever seen.
Oh, that was due today? Yeah, I got it.
That's exactly what I was like. Oh, yeah, I got that for sure. And they just whipped it up. I mean, somebody got paid a lot of money to do that.
Yeah, this is like somebody definitely went with the pitch of, hey man, less is more here. Let's just go with the bare minimum and just give them the number, and that's all they need.
You know what this reminds me of is kind of this direction that we had in a lot of aspects of society where you eliminate the beauty from certain things, whether it be
minimalist
like this or architecture, and it's very minimalist and just functional. And we forget that actual beauty and aesthetics matter for human beings, and they just completely forgot this right here.
That's one thing I love about Europe. I will say the buildings, great buildings, great architecture.
Yeah.
So they got that.
They got that. There's one point for Europe from Mike. The architecture is good for the human spirit and the soul of human beings.
It's true.
This jitterbug or this little score bug here is not good for the human spirit.
Yeah. Okay. Part of me is like, you know what? The score bug, it doesn't really matter when you're talking about beauty. The beauty is actually what's unfolding on the game, right? The gameplay is what is so beautiful and why we're all sitting there to watch. But when you see this attached to what's beautifully happening on the field, it's like you get the sense that nobody cared. Like this, that's what this is screaming to me. It's like, yeah, we don't want to detract from the beauty of the game. It's like, yeah, sure. But also like the detail on stained glass windows is there. And this is not it.
Right. See, the beautiful detail on stained glass windows is not taken away from what's going on inside of the church. Okay. So you can still have a nice, respectable, aesthetically pleasing element here that does not take away from the beauty that's going on the football field. However, I would argue that on the Chiefs side of things, there was not that much beauty going on the football field. It was actually pretty disgusting.
Sticking to your window analogy, this is like when somebody's driving an old car and they break their window and they put the garbage bag with duct tape on the window. That's the equivalent. And Louis C.K. has a great bit about this.
He does. That is a great bit. You're never going to see somebody with 2 garbage bag windows. Hopefully not. So yeah, that's just we don't like that here. This is not good on the media front. How about commercials? Which commercials stood out to you? Any of these? This is always such a huge conversation, and this is actually like coming from the perspective of an American in Europe. This is what a lot of Europeans talk about: is the commercials around the Super Bowl. It's so cool. You get to see all of these famous actors. What commercials stood out to you, Scott?
Oh man, there were so many. The one that like jarred me the most was the Mountain Dew with Seal as the seal. I don't know why that one just I couldn't get that out of my brain. So mission accomplished, Mountain Dew. You made me feel really weird.
That's good marketing. If you're still thinking about it, that's good marketing. Are you gonna go buy a Mountain Dew now?
Maybe.
Oh, Scott, no, you should not.
You shouldn't drink soda pop.
I know.
It's
Mike,
worse for you than alcohol.
We call it pop, not so. You're right, though it is. I don't know if we can
for the mass audience.
I don't know if we can throw this up, Scott, because of the copyright. Can we?
Yeah, I'm not gonna play the audio or anything like that, but I'm gonna throw this one up here. No, I like this commercial because yeah, you're right. It's definitely a unifying message. It's pre-kickoff, all of that kind of stuff. It's definitely a message that's needed when you're going into a level of competition that should be about healthy tribalism, right? I always harp on that, and that's as opposed to like it just being people pitted against one another as though they're fighting for their existence. So the fact that this was even played is a good sign for us moving forward and trying to heal the wounds of the past decade, let's call it, in the divisiveness. So like, I'm all for this kind of messaging in commercials.
Yeah, I think that's a great point with sports and with football, because they are about to embark on our most aggressive, our most violent sports in these 2 different fan bases and teams from different cities. And yeah, technically the teams hate each other and they are enemies. However, in the grand scheme of things, under the umbrella of the flag of the United States, we're all Americans together. So in the broader sense, we are all on the same team. And I felt like that message or that commercial right there gave that message. I did want to touch on this because this came out last week. Aaron Rodgers. Do we have time?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Let's just touch on this. Aaron Rodgers, who apparently flew back to New York last week to meet with the Jets, presumably to try and find a deal or agreement for situation for next season. And the Jets have informed Aaron Rodgers in a meeting last week that they will be moving on from him. His time with the Jets is over after 2 seasons. Thoughts on this, Scott? Do you think that he was expecting this, or did this kind of blindside him?
He had to have been expecting this. There's been so much turnover there over the past year and a half that it can't be that big of a surprise, especially with how they played this year. Granted, he played pretty dang well. Like, he didn't put them in a position that they were losing because of him, right? So like, he didn't turn the ball over all that much. He actually played quite solidly, which I don't think a lot of people give enough credit to him for that.
Right.
It's just a lot of blame because at the end of the day, yes, wins and losses, but I don't hear a lot of people saying that about Joe Burrow. Beside the point. I think this is writing on the wall for him. I think it's actually something he's probably looking forward to as well. Like, yes, he's going to say that he wants to stay there because, that's why he chose to go there in the first place, is because he thought it was a good opportunity for him. But the opportunity that it was is no longer what it is now because there has been so much turnover. So I'm looking forward to seeing him actually get a breath of fresh air somewhere else, getting an opportunity outside of New York. I just never got the sense that he was a New York dude. I was surprised from the get-go that he chose here.
Felt like a weird brand fit for him. Speaking of the new regime there, apparently Aaron Glenn, these are the rumors, Aaron Glenn did not want to have Aaron Rodgers a part of the team moving forward. Like Aaron Glenn coming in here as a first-year head coach, trying to establish and build a culture there with the Jets. And apparently he did not want Aaron to be a part of that, or thought that he could not be a part of that puzzle right there. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I understand that. I don't think it's a negative. I don't think Aaron Glenn has negative thoughts or views toward Aaron. I think it's just a matter of Aaron Glenn wanting the best opportunity to talk about blank slate. Like he wants to build this thing from the ground up in his way. And look, when you have Aaron Rodgers in the building as your quarterback, you're not going to not take his word or his advice or his thoughts into account when you're the head coach, and especially a first time head coach at that. And that's Aaron just making a business decision on his part, and probably a personal decision. He's just like, look, I can't come in here as the leader while also having someone in my ear whispering as to the things I probably should or shouldn't do moving forward, and that could potentially diminish my leadership role or my, call it, alphaness of the team. So I totally get it. I totally understand why he did this. And I don't think there's ill will between the two, or Aaron Glenn's like, Aaron Rodgers is not the dude. Right. I think it's just more of like, hey, this is my opportunity. This is an opportunity for the Jets to really get a fresh start, and I want to take it to the next level. So let's agree to part ways, and you can go ball out somewhere else.
Yeah. Ball out is a strong term, but yeah, play football. Aaron Glenn, we have seen him communicate with the New York media in a couple of those sound bites, and the dude is tough. He's not backing down really from anybody, and it seems like he's going to do things his way there, which is why he got hired. I mean, obviously what he did with the Detroit Lions defense and that whole defensive culture with a rotating door, a rotating cast of characters, whoever they could put on the field, still having some success there. So this move does make sense to me. I'm wondering, where is Aaron Rodgers going to land if he continues to play? I think he's still got a year or two left in him, and he does not want to go out kind of how he has gone out here. And like you said, dude, in the back half, especially of last year, he was playing pretty damn well. We kind of stopped putting a spotlight on him in the first half of the season. All eyes were kind of on the New York Jets and Aaron coming back from this Achilles injury and how he's going to actually play with the Jets. And it was not off to a good start. Second half of the season, though, he was very, very solid. And so he still has a market. I'm wondering which team you think he ends up at. What do you think about the Raiders?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Chip Kelly.
It'd be really weird. It'd be really weird though, because I think at this point it's very clear that him and Devontae Adams are a couple, and they're going together wherever they're going to go, because Devontae is done after this year as well, I believe, or can be, and I'm assuming he will go ahead and take that that route. So I like him going back to the Raiders would be weird. Because he just left them.
Devontae would,
in kind of a strange way. Granted, it's going to be a completely different team, obviously, without the previous head coach and organization and everything like that. Tom seems to be far more involved. Pete Carroll at the helm, vastly different dude. So I could see that being a possibility. But ultimately, I've been seeing this around here. He's got to quote unquote fulfill the prophecy and follow precisely the same path as Brett Favre and go to Minnesota, take over for Sam Darnold.
Well, when Brett Favre ended up going to Minnesota, he played statistically one of his best years ever. Like, I was so sad when that happened, dude, because I was such a Green Bay Packers, Brett Favre fan growing up, and I was just devastated to see him go to a different team. And so I was not happy for his success in New York or in Minnesota. Another possible landing spots, depending on how things go with Russell Wilson, would be Pittsburgh, and some people are talking about that. However, thinking about that, I feel like Mike Tomlin and him, I don't know, they might clash a little bit.
I don't think it would be the same sort of clash as with an Aaron Glenn. Tomlin's like an old school dude, and I would say cut from the same cloth that Aaron is. That's not to say Aaron Glenn is not cut from old school cloth, but he's, again, first time head coach. Tomlin has been at that helm for 20 years ish, if not a little more.
Yeah.
So like, I think he's able to work with guys like Aaron because they're so simpatico and they've been there for so long and they know so much. So I think they'd be able to work better in tandem together than, say, a first time head coach in Aaron Glenn.
Yeah. Mike, what were you going to say?
I was going to say exactly what Scott was saying about him going to the Vikings, fulfilling the prophecy, following Brett Favre's career exactly. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We will see. Well, actually, I'm super curious to see what the Vikings do at quarterback with the Sam Darnold situation, because there's a lot of moves they could do. Ship him off, go with JJ McCarthy. Another possible landing spot for Aaron Rodgers could be Tennessee, but I don't see him going to a place like Tennessee. I don't see it.
Do not do that. I mean, I think he experienced it right here. It's just you don't go with the flashiest of options, I would say. So that's why the Steelers one actually is quite interesting. Granted, it puts Justin Fields in a strange situation because he would have to be behind another Hall of Famer, probably.
Yeah.
I can't imagine them bringing him in and putting Fields in front.
Have we heard anything about Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh? Because aren't there rumors that he is not going to be coming back there?
Yeah, I've only ever heard. I've been hearing rumors that him and Arthur Smith had like a little bit of butting heads, but like who doesn't when you're an OG quarterback, Super Bowl winning quarterback, and an OC who's like very staunch and call it. I don't want to say stuck in his ways, but very, very determined to get his offense out there on the field. So there's going to be back and forth, similar to as we've always heard that there are back and forth between Peyton Manning and his OCs over the years, and Aaron Rodgers and his OCs, Hackett included, and so on and so forth. So it's like that's not crazy, but that rumor seems to be like the linchpin for people being like, Russ is out because those two don't get along with each other.
Yeah. It's interesting. You touched on it there, the Super Bowl winning quarterback. I said earlier, there's only 3 active quarterbacks in the last 10 years who are still in the league who have won a Super Bowl. But if you expand it back to a few more years, you've got Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson are the only other 2 quarterbacks currently in the NFL who have won a Super Bowl. So it's 5 quarterbacks. That's it. It's a very, very small crew of active quarterbacks right now. And so we will see where these Super Bowl winning quarterbacks may or may not end up. I think the last thing that I wanted to hit on, because the NFL Honors was last week, we didn't get a touch on it. And I just want to talk about the MVP conversation, because there's such a debate and a back and forth on Lamar versus Josh Allen, who should have been the MVP. Josh Allen ultimately came away with the award, but a lot of people are upset by that. And Scott, if you will throw up this tweet here with some of these statistics that showed them, but what are your thoughts on the MVP going to Josh Allen?
I'm going to stay consistent here and say, like, I always thought Josh was going to win it, or I thought Josh should win it, even late into the regular season. Like, I understand a lot of these stats are going to show one thing, and it's going to cut against the argument that I made early on about Brady and Mahomes and the GOAT conversation there. But I think one of the big factors here is MVP is vastly different in a sense that if you remove that one player from the team, how will that team function moving forward? And I think it's too obvious when you match roster against roster for the Ravens and the Bills as to who that really is and who's the real driver. That's not to say Lamar is not the driver of the Ravens' success. He's massively a big part of that. But even if you were to get a middling quarterback or a middle of the pack quarterback behind center at the Ravens, I still think they would be wildly successful. 1, due to their defense, and 2, their offensive firepower is still there, especially in the run game. So, this one's hard.
Who's a middling quarterback that you still could have some success? Not the same level of success as Lamar, but at Baltimore still carry them to maybe a playoff berth.
Shoot. I mean, I would even say, like, if you threw a Justin Fields there right now.
Interesting. He was doing great in Pittsburgh in the first half of the season.
Yeah. So did Russ. And then we all saw how that ended up. So, I just think the Ravens are built different. And they're built differently than the Steelers are. So and I don't think while I think Fields is really good, I don't think he's top 10. So that's why I suggest even if you put him there,
they'd be fine. It's also funny in this statistic head-to-head, they choose to put the 1-0, 0-1 just for the regular season. But the step that actually matters is the playoff game in which Josh Allen was 1-0 and Lamar Jackson was 0-1. So it's a nice little cherry picking of data right here. But yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that you touched on there is just it's not a statistical award. It is, and some people in the media who voted on it, they kind of explain this. That it's similar to what you said, why they voted for Josh Allen over Lamar Jackson, and it is if you took that player away, how much would it affect that team? And the Bills, when you compare those rosters head up like 1-to-1, it would just be an absolutely different football team.
Yeah, I think do they have the stat here? I mean, even I would be curious to see the sack percentage, which quarterback put their offense in more precarious situations to gain first downs or to score, so the rushing element here, while it's great to see these numbers, it's still not like a full picture of, say, the actual game and in the situation of a game, like what occurred.
We need those NGS that we couldn't figure out earlier, those next gen stats, so we can have a more complete picture on this. So that was kind of the big story coming out of the NFL honors. But you know what? Both of these guys are not on the level of our guy Jalen Hurts now, because he's a Super Bowl champion, and Lamar and Josh Allen have both been bounced down a tier, as has Joe Burrow, because Jalen Hurts has a ring. So there we have it.
As has Kevin.
This is I
was just going to say that.
Damn it, Mike. Almost had it. Okay, there it is. Super Bowl. NFL season is over. It's absolutely devastating and very, very sad. And there's going to be a void in our lives. But
what are we going to talk about?
Mike, this is your time to shine. Horse racing, darts, cricket.
This is really fun. Okay.
All of the alternative sports. Okay.
I like it.
Right?
Good.
Right. This is your time. So we're going to be getting into some other stuff. Also, the UFL, we will still have some football. UFL is interesting, and the ELF also interesting. Europe is a place too, guys. We have football.
Sure.
Sure it is. You said earlier you like the buildings, Mike. All right.
I do like the buildings.
You like the buildings. That's it. We will see you guys on Wednesday. Mike, Scott, see you later.
Peace.